Alrighty then guys, I want to show you how you can end with a board of like 5 or 6 negates with this deck. Like I said, this deck has a lot of extenders and a lot of really interesting plays that allows you to end on several negates. Mostly monster negates, but like one omni negate in Dragoon. And so I'm just going to show you guys how this deck ends on that board. Okay, so this is a pretty decent hand. You do have the tour guide if you wanted to go that option, but like I said before, if you do get like ashed or basically any hand trap from tour guide, then you basically lost the duel from there, because the only thing you have left after that is an imperm. You could like link this off and then so I guess if you wanted to go that route, then you could summon it. If it got ashed or whatever, you could actually like link this off into Almirage, and then you could Monster Reborn back the tour guide and then go into Preda, and then from there go into Dragoon. But that's the least optimal play. You have a lot more options if you decided to go the route of the Phantom Knights cards. So for example, since they activate in the hand, you could actually summon Cloak and then special the boots, and then from here you can actually go into Cherubini. And then since Cherubini's effect is the send from deck to grave is a cost, you can actually activate the effect. And even if you were to get like Veiler or something here, it's not that big a deal. You could hit the Graph, or you could choose, since you have the Cloak in grave, if you wanted to go a little bit safer, you could also go Torn Scales. So whichever one you feel a bit more comfortable with, you can actually go ahead and do. It doesn't really matter too much. If you wanted to get like the extra extensions, then you could go with the Graph, and then from Graph you go into Seer. The only problem is that if they do have the Ash like we talked about, then they're probably gonna Ash the Graph, and then you don't really have a way to get into the rank 3, or sorry, the link 3, but you have to basically Monster Reborn one of the cards and bring it back. I'm going to follow the combo as if they don't have any hand traps, just to show you what the deck can potentially end on, and just to kind of give you an idea of what the deck can do. But essentially, if you were worried about about Ash or something like that, then you could, instead of sending Graph, you would send the Torn Scales, activate the Ancient Cloak to try to grab the, I think it's the Greaves, the other one that came out of the Phantom Rage set. And then if they Ash that, then that's perfectly fine, because you can still activate Torn Scales from grave to summon itself, and then basically discard a card and continue your combo. But if they don't Ash that, then you kind of have to play around some other things. But I'm going to go, like I said, I'm going to go under the assumption they don't have any hand traps, just to show you the full extent of the combo. So now that you've sent those, you can go ahead and link these off into the Rusty Bardiche. And then we're going to activate the effect of Seer and Grave to summon the Cherubini back. Now that you have that, you're going to activate the Rusty Bardiche to send Torn Scales. And then after that, you can set the Fog Blade. After that, you're going to go ahead and activate the Ancient Cloak. Since we've already used the effective boots, that's a once per turn to special summon itself. So we're going to actually want to grab the Greaves here, because as you'll see in just a second, we're going to activate the effective Torn Scales to special summon itself from the grave. And then since a Phantom Knight's monster was special summoned, we can actually special summon Greaves from hand. But you don't want to use the secondary effect to increase the level by 1, because we're about to use these for a Xyz summon. So now we have those. We have a couple different options. If you wanted to activate the effect of Torn Scales, you could, to discard and go into and send something like either one of the trap cards or like the gloves to the grave. But since we have Monster Reborn as an extender, basically this is like another like random card. You'd probably discard the random card, because we're going to save this basically as cost for Dragoon. But we don't really need to do that in this scenario, since Monster Reborn is kind of a better extender right now anyway. So we're going to use these to go into Levier, and then from Levier we are going to send the Stinging Greaves to summon the Cloak, activate the Cloak effect to have the Bardiche gain 800 attack. I'm just going to use that for now as an indicator. And then now what we can do is we can actually Monster Reborn the Stinging Greaves back, and then Here I'm going to activate the effect of Silent Boots to grab a Phantom Knights card. So basically here we have one of two options. If this effect gets negated, then we know what we want to go into after we go into the Breaksword. We would just want to go into the Evil Swarm Nightmare. But if this doesn't get negated, then it would be a good idea to grab the rank up Magic Force. You could also grab a second Fog Blade if you wanted to, but this way gives you extra negates. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually Xyz summon into Breaksword. We're going to activate the effect of Rusty Bardiche to pop the Breaksword, since it was special summoned to a zone that it points to. And then we're going to activate the effect of Breaksword to special summon these two back, but now they're both level 4. And then now we're going to use these, go into the Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, and then we're going to use these as material to go into Preda. We're going to activate the Preda effect, so pay 2,000, and then we're going to send the Red Eyes Fusion, and then that's going to send Dark Magician and Red Eyes, and that's going to give us Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. And then now you can just go ahead and set the Imperm and the rank up card face down. So just to kind of show you what we have here. We have the Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon here, which doesn't really do anything right now. But what you're going to do is on your opponent's turn, you already have 2 monster negates with the Imperm and the Fog Blade, and this is kind of like a pseudo spell and trap negation as well, just because it will basically blank out this entire zone. And then with Dragoon, you have an Omni negate by discarding the Tour Guide. And then also what you can do is you can activate the magic rank up Magic Force and basically banish any dark monster from your grave, except for like the if you can avoid banishing the Cherubini or one of the Phantom Knights monsters, that would be ideal. And so you can actually rank up into the Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon, and you have 2 options here. If you have a monster that you want to destroy right now, then you can actually summon this to the zone that Rusty Bardiche points to and pop a monster. Or if not, then you can wait and you can activate the Requiem effect to detach, probably want to detach Cloak, to negate a monster effect, and this effect allows you to special summon a Dark Xyz monster from the grave. So you summon Breaksword, activate the effect of Rusty Bardiche, and pop something else. So essentially what you have here is basically, with this board, you basically have 1 disruption in the pop for Rusty Bardiche. You have 3 monster negates with the Requiem Xyz Dragon, 1 Omni negate with the Dragoon, 1 monster negate with the Fog Blade, another monster negate with Imperm, but obviously this can basically be anything like a hand trap or anything else. So basically, let's just say that even if you didn't have the Imperm, which is just another card in hand, you're still ending on essentially what is 3, 4, 5 negates plus a disruption. You're pretty much set. Not only that, but if you really wanted to, you could actually Fog Blade your own Verta Anaconda to stop it from dying, in case they try to attack it. And then next turn you could like summon something, or like if you summoned the Breaksword off of this, then you could just basically summon 1 more monster, which is pretty easy to do with any of the Phantom Knights cards, and then go into like Borosword and basically just OTK. Next up, I just wanted to showcase what you could do with just the gloves basically. These are all just basically dead cards in hand at the moment for turn 1. There's a good chance, I added Fog Blade just because there's a good chance that you're going to have some type of like Phantom Knight spell or trap in hand, especially since we run about 4 or 5. So there's a good chance that you're going to end up with like 1 of these in hand. There's a good chance you can have some sort of like disruption or protection or something. So that's why I added this. This is just basically just dead cards in hand. You might end up with like an Ash or something, or like an Imperm, and these are just basically any other 2 dead cards that you're not gonna have in hand. But generally, you're gonna have a little bit more hand power just because you're gonna be using these in a sec. But generally, this is like a pretty like terrible hand. I guess just to make it more terrible. Just to make it more terrible, we'll just have like double Ash or something. The only time this doesn't work is if you also hard draw the Red Eyes Fusion, which in that case you're pretty much just screwed. There's not a whole lot you can do about that, but that's why we also run 43, is to prevent the likelihood of drawing into just like the absolute bricks. By that I mean like the Dragoon package. But like I said, we're gonna basically pretend this is like a worst case scenario. So we're gonna go ahead and normal summon Ragged Gloves. And then we're gonna go ahead and link this off into Almirage. Next off, we're going to use the Ragged Gloves to banish itself, to send the Ancient Cloak to the grave. And the Ancient Cloak allows us to grab the Shade Brigandine, because it's the Phantom Knights card. It allows you to grab it, not just Phantom Knights. Like, for example, Fogblade is like just Phantom Knights Fogblade, but since this is the Phantom Knights card, all the monsters are typically the Phantom Knights, and all the spell and trap cards are just Phantom Knights. But since this trap card, this is one of the only trap cards that is the Phantom Knights card, which allows you to grab it from Ancient Cloak. And so what you're going to do is you're going to set this, but since we don't have any other trap cards in the grave, you can actually activate it the same turn that you set it. And so now you can special summon it. And then now we're going to go ahead and link this off using Link Spider. We have 2 effect monsters. We're going to link these off into Preda. And then we're going to activate Preda effect, hit the Red Eyes Fusion. Like I said, worst possible scenario, you have these in hand. And then you still end on a Dragoon. Doesn't really matter where. You typically want to try to keep these 3 zones, basically the 2 end zones and the middle zone, available if you can. Just because when you do get to go into Cherubini, its protection effect is only in the zones that it points to. So let's just say you were somehow able to go into like Cherubini and like you had to, you could put it there. And so then if you were found a way to basically special summon the Seer from the deck or something by using like Graph or whatever, this has to protect Seer or else it's going to destroy itself. So you typically want to try to keep these 3 zones available if possible. If not, then it's not that big a deal, especially if you're like bricking anyway, so there's not really a whole lot you can really do. But basically, this is what you would end on, which is not terrible. I mean, you have Red Eyes Dragoon as an Omni Negate. You're probably going to have like something else in hand to use. And like I said, these are probably going to be something else, like a Fogblade or something. So it allows you to basically, it at least allows you to basically continue playing. And then from there, it just really depends on like what you draw into. And outing Dragoon is pretty hard. As it is, especially if you're not playing like top tier decks. I mean, obviously top tier decks are going to be able to out it pretty easily. Other decks might have a harder time, especially because this is kind of more of like in the lower like rogue status or whatever. So then you draw into Silent Boots. I mean, depending on what you have on the field, this could actually get you into Rusty Bardiche, and then from there you can basically keep on going. It really just depends, but like I said, I just wanted to showcase what you could do with an absolute garbage hand. Yeah, so like I said, that's why we have these 2 options in the extra deck, is to allow for that, and that's why we also run this. Oh, sorry, not boots. Either gloves or cloak gets you out of that situation, and so that's why we run that. Okay, so now I want to show what this deck can do just by playing through with a ton of extensions, assuming that your opponent has a couple of disruptions, like let's just say like a Veiler and an Ash. So this hand is pretty decent for that. What we're going to actually do is activate Rhoda. And here you have a couple different options. I don't think that somebody's gonna like Ash straight off the Rhoda like that. If they do, then you still have follow-up being the Ragged Gloves and then the Silent Boots, and you can still basically go full combo from there. You can either grab the Kagemucha Knights, because this allows you to basically get 3 monsters on the board just straight off the summon. But I think a good option would be something like the Torn Scales, because the Torn Scales pairs really well with the Dangerous Tsuchinoko. So we're going to Rhoda for Torn Scales. We're going to summon Torn Scales, and then we're going to go ahead and special the Silent Boots. We're going to activate Torn Scales effect, discard Tsuchinoko's cost. If they Ash here, you still have, like I said, full combo going into Cherubini, and you just still have a lot of different options through there. But in the case that they didn't, you're going to send the Cloak. Then after that resolves, we're going to go ahead and special summon the Tsuchinoko. And then we're going to go ahead and use these 2 to go into Cherubini. And then a good play for them here would be to Veiler the Cherubini on summon, because then you can't use the effect to send for cost. Or actually, now that I think about it, even if they were to Veiler the Cherubini, you could actually still activate the effect and send for cost, but it would just get negated. So that would actually be a bad play as well. But let's say there's something like Ghost Ogre, which would normally be kind of an issue. So if they had Ghost Ogre, and let's say you activated the effect, you could send the Graph. And if they Ghost Ogre, you could actually, instead of this being destroyed, you could send the Dangerous Tsuchinoko, and then Graph effect would activate, because Cherubini can protect itself by sending another card you control to the grave instead. So then you can still summon Seer. You could use these 2 to go into Rusty Bardiche, effective Seer, special summon Cherubini. Or even if they had something like Skullmeister or Ghost Bell, let's just say they activated that as like another disruption, what you could do now is activate the Rusty Bardiche, and this will probably be a pretty solid Ash target for them, so let's just say that that got Ashed. Now essentially you've played through about 2 or 3 disruptions. I'd say it'd be pretty unlikely that they had more after that. So what you could do now is actually kind of just continue to go off, so you could actually activate the Ancient Cloak, grab the Stained Greaves, and then activate the effect of Torn Scales, special summon itself, activate the effect of Stained Greaves, special summon itself as well. Then also what you could do here is, since you have the Shade Brigandine, you could set it, activate it, put itself here, and then from here we can go into Levier. And then with Levier, you're gonna actually detach to summon Ancient Cloak, activate Ancient Cloak effect to gain 800 attack on your Rusty Bardiche again, banish the Stained Greaves, special summon Ragged Gloves, and then from here we can actually use Shade Brigandine to go into Link Spider, use these two to go into Break Sword, activate effect of Rusty Bardiche, pop the Break Sword, use these two again to go into Evil Swarm Nightmare, and then we're going to use these two to go into Preda. We're going to activate Preda, send the Red Eyes Fusion, and then we're going to send Dark Magician and Red Eyes, summon Dragoon. And so now the part of this is that you don't have any cards in hand anymore that went through our entire hand, which is kind of a common occurrence for this deck sometimes. But what is really nice is you can actually use the boots here as an extender and grab us just basically any Phantom Knights card. You could grab Fogblade if you want, but since we're not actually going to be setting it here, I'd probably just grab something like Wing or the Sword or whatever, just to have an extra Phantom Knights card with a different name in the grave in case we need it for later. And so now essentially even playing through about 2 or 3 negates or 2 or 3 disruptions, not to mention that they were ones that were pretty much timed in the right spots for the most part. I mean, a lot of time you want to try to stop Cherubini from, if you could try to stop the Cherubini from getting like a 3rd card on the field or whatever to go into Bardiche, that'd be great. Or like I said, ashing the Bardiche is a pretty solid choice as well. The only thing is maybe you want to like save like a Veiler for like Vert Anaconda or whatever. But even if they did that, you would still have, you could instead grab a Fogblade here and then just set the Fogblade, because then you wouldn't have to worry about having a card in hand for Dragoon. And then you have basically 2 Book of Moons right here, which is a pretty solid form of disruption as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the Rusty Bardiche disruption, so you still have an Omni Negate, 2 Book of Moons, and then later on you have follow-up. Actually, you do have a follow-up, because if you can potentially use the Rusty Bardiche, because if you use the Dragoon effect to discard, on your opponent's turn you can still use this as well. Banish, and then summon the Break Sword to a zone that Bardiche points to, activate effect of Bardiche and pop a card. So essentially you have about 4 disruptions, which is pretty crazy after playing through 3 disruptions on your own turn. So like I said, this deck has a ton of extenders and is able to kind of go into like whatever you want. You could have alternatively went into the Requiem or the Dark Rebellion here, and then with the boots gotten the rank up card and then gone from there. Then you would have 3 monster negates, but I think I prefer the Omni Negate of Dragoon because it just kind of gives you more flexibility, and then plus having 2 Book of Moons is still really solid as well, especially if you are going against something like Dragon Link or something. You can like basically just Book of Moon their monsters before they get a chance to like link into their like main combo starters. Like I said, this deck is pretty powerful in what it can do. And it's really up to you on basically how you want to play through certain cards and how you want to build up your board to prepare for whatever you're going into. It just has a lot of versatility, which personally I like, and I think it has a good cards to basically unbreak yourself if you run into like a lot of like really bad situations. Ending on Dragoon is always nice. That's why I said I really prefer if you can get the Dragoon package, just because it helps unbreak you out of like a lot of otherwise terrible situations. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like this was valuable, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.